Hello, and welcome to Casual Krakoa. Thanks everybody for waiting there. I was just uploading the Onslaught Revelation video, Krakoa review, which you can check out on the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel now. See some people trickling in here for the live stream. Thanks for joining. I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. Today we're going to be talking primarily about the 2021 X-Men Inferno event written by Jonathan Hickman with various superstar artists. It's going to be a 4-issue oversized event series. It starts next week. We are 1 week away, so we're going to be doing a pregame live Q&A. Get in those questions in the chat. I will answer as many as I can tackle. We got some good ones before we even got started here, so I'm going to try and tackle a bunch of those as well. Super Chat is open and available for those of you who are generous and looking to support the site. You can be generous and not support the site. let me rephrase that. Who are looking to generously support Comic Book Herald, it is greatly appreciated. You can do so in the Super Chat. And any donations I will, translate to future Comic Book Herald endeavors, and also I will definitely prioritize that question, but I will get to as many as I see here and can. It is mildly difficult to chat away by yourself for an hour and also try to read questions and pull them into a thing. But here we are, right? That's what Casual Krakoa is. Every Wednesday or thereabouts after X-Men and new Marvel comics come out, I like to gather here for the live stream to talk about what happened, in the X-Men comics, talk about some of the news in the world of Marvel Comics and X-Men, and where we're going from here. But again, today is primarily going to be pregame, okay? Which is, we're getting ready for Inferno, and I am in need of Inferno, okay? Let's put it that way. Inferno is the final Hickman event, right? After kicking off the House of X and Powers of 10 era, and all the promise that entailed, and all of the incredible details that we expected, and all the plots that are still sitting out there unanswered, right? And here we are, Inferno is going to come in and give us the last bit of that from the pen of Jonathan Hickman that we're going to get for the foreseeable future, right? And I'm definitely at a place with X-Men comics and where the line's at, where I need that as in terms of engagement, in terms of enthusiasm with what's happening in X-Men and in this Marvel Comics universe. I need that big picture, what was Hickman thinking stuff that connects back to House and Powers for me to feel enthused and engaged with X-Men, even on a somewhat similar wavelength to where I was even 1 year ago, right? And I think a big part of that is 2021 has been, in many, many ways, a year of stagnation. It's something I've talked about, and there's plenty of good individual books, right? There's plenty of stuff I like. There's a lot of good X-Men comics right now. I like Al Ewing's Sword. I was quite positive about Cy Spurrier's Way of X, and we'll talk a little bit about the X-Men comics that did come out today, including Onslaught Revelation, which is the end of the Way of X series. I've got an image up here, next to me, which is from the end of Onslaught Revelation. We had X-Men number 3 came out today, and also X-Corp number 5. But I think, it's definitely, let me know if there's an issue with the mic here. I'm seeing a comment in the chat. Am I coming through okay? Is sound working? I'm not seeing anything on my end, but if there is an issue, definitely let me know here in the chat, and I will try to address it as best I can. But in the meantime, definitely, I need the big picture stuff. I'm very ready for Inferno. This line has stagnated and stalled a bit, I think, in certain ways, and it's also something that is not that's not just me. Okay, there was an interview with Jonathan Hickman this week. It was the final Adventures in Poor Taste X-Men Monday with Hickman. It's a really good interview. All of them are. You should check out the work that Chris Hassan does over there on AIPT. But in that interview, one of the quotes that Hickman had is, he's basically talking about, how did we do? And he's saying, here, let me double check the mic here, make sure see if there's anything that can be done. Bit distorted. Okay, what can be done about that? Let's check it out. Thanks everybody for the patience and for the chats. All right, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. People tell me how it's coming through now. We're going to go down to about 75%. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Let me know if we still got problems, and then we'll do fine. All right. All right, coming in a little too hot. That's how I feel right now. I feel a little too hot, a little warm. It's a long day. I'm disappointed. Here's the thing: I love X-Men comics. I love Marvel comics. But the comics today I'm feeling kind of hollow, and I feel disappointed that I'm not more excited about what's happening primarily in the X-Men series. Okay, I'm disappointed in myself. I want to do better as a fan. No, but truly, I'm just feeling more critical, and there's a hollowness to these X-Men comics without, I think, not specifically Hickman, but it's been Hickman, right? So that's what we're talking about. But like with that center presence of someone who is masterminding and pulling all the strings and keeping everything cohesive and together without that center, right? And it's still there. It's still building towards Inferno. But with the absence of that center at the heart of things, like, I'm disappointed. Oh, you know what? You know what? Open Mike Eagle here in the chat is telling me it sounds like I'm coming through my webcam instead of my better microphone. Let's switch that. Look at that, switching it on the fly. Does that sound any better? How is that? That should be better now. Good grief. Good grief. You know, this is not my first live stream. Clearly, because I actually know how to change the microphone as I talk. That's a new skill. Look at me go. Little tech wizard over here. Thanks for the feedback. But all right, so we got some argument here in the chat about whether or not the line has actually stagnated. Okay, and this is something where I've been going back and forth as well. Okay, about, because big things have happened, right? X-Men like plenty of things have happened in 2021. I'm not saying no good things have happened and no good comics have been released. That's not the truth. Hellfire Gala had major differences. Okay, major differences, right? They claimed a planet. That was a big thing. We have a mutant planet is the capital of the solar system. That's cool and awesome and good. And there's still incredible stuff going on, you know, in these comics. But there's not necessarily that connect to House and Powers and sort of the center hooks, the hooks that got us all, that got into like the hearts and minds of readers everywhere. That stuff has stagnated. And again, going back to the quote here by Hickman, this is not just my observation. This is literally what Hickman is saying when we read this quote. Okay, so they're talking about how would you grade the line? And he's basically like, I think in terms of getting people in terms of sales, we're doing great. But Hickman's actually a pretty good critic, we learned here. And one thing he says is, one, I believe we needed a broader aesthetic, a bigger artistic umbrella. That's something we perhaps could have controlled a little better. Okay, I think that one's fair. I think that one's good, right? Literally, the artistry and the visuals and the tone of the line could have had more variance. I think that's true. I wouldn't necessarily say that's a huge criticism of the line right now, but that's interesting. I don't think he's wrong there. The second one, though, is what I've been saying, and it's what I was just saying. I think we needed to maintain a more relentless velocity. Narrative rhythm is good, necessary, I think, in the individual titles, but with the line as big as ours, the whole thing still has to feel like a freight train. The pandemic really screwed us there, and along with other complications, it's taken us until now to get everything back on track. There you have it. From the head of X himself, they know they've stagnated. They stagnated intentionally because of the forces in play, because of the pandemic screwing up shipping. It's wild. I mean, not totally understanding the ins and outs of comic book scheduling and distribution and all that stuff, how badly they're still, like just now, you know, a year and a half later, picking up the pieces and getting everything in place for Inferno. But it's right there, and the narrative velocity did slow down. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about stagnation. It's not that comics can't be good. It's not that things haven't happened. It's that they literally had to like pause and take a breath because things aren't where they need to be. And that's been disappointing. So, all right, enough about what's disappointing. Let's talk about what's coming and what's exciting, because I do think Inferno is going to be great. I think it's going to be super exciting. I do want to hear more and more questions as you have them as we talk about it. Again, I will do some Casual Krakoa quick reviews of the comics that came out today. Again, we have Onslaught Revelation, which I have a full Kraken Krakoa video up on the channel. Again, subscribe to the channel. Go check out the links in the show notes to the playlist. That just went live basically as I was starting the Casual Krakoa stream here, and you can check out what's coming there. Let's actually start with that one, because it is a potential Inferno giveaway. Okay, now if you haven't read Onslaught Revelation or any of the comics that came out today, some mild spoilers may ensue, including the image you've been staring at this entire time. So if you're super worried about that, bail or whatever and come back later. But here's the thing: at the end of the Onslaught Revelation, and this is less story based so much as the teaser about the new series that's coming out of this. Honestly, at the end of this book, which I was again a bit disappointed by, and I talk about that in full on the review. I thought it was pretty muddled. Honestly, I thought it was a very muddled book that is very badly trying to craft sort of utopian philosophy for the perfect culture, and it's kind of trying to be everything and nothing all at the same time. That was my biggest complaint with sort of where we netted out in Onslaught Revelation. It's also way too interested in Fabian Cortez. No book should be this interested in Fabian Cortez. Sorry, just shouldn't happen. Like, too much. But okay, at the end of this book, there's a teaser for what is going to be the next series, and it is we keep the peace, we keep the law, we keep the spark. And the tease here is Nightcrawler sort of uncovers what the future of the Way of X is going to be, and it's going to be basically the Spark of X, or just the Spark, whatever he's going to be calling it. And there's going to be a new team, it would seem, led by Nightcrawler. We've got Dr. Nemesis, longtime Spurrier fave, Pixie, who's been a part of the Way of X, Juggernaut, unexpected cameo, Forget-Me-Not, hell yeah, and who am I missing? Oh, and Blindfold. And all this is going to be taking place inside Legion's mind, as headquarters. So Legion is basically a part of this team as well, it would seem. But here's the Inferno giveaway. Okay, Blind Spot being on the team that's going to be called the Legionaries, not the Legionnaires, not actually a DC Legion of Superheroes crossover, but Blindfold's presence here is a big deal. Blindfold is a precognitive mutant, okay, and on Krakoa, to this point, precognitive mutants are not allowed on the island, with the possible exception of Betsy Braddock, who I think everyone just forgot that in the Alan Moore, Alan Davis days, she technically had precognitive capabilities. It doesn't come up super often. It's been a few decades. Not a super hot topic right now, okay? And so anyway, Betsy's there, but Destiny not allowed to be resurrected, famously, right, per House and Powers, and Blindfold is kind of the main individual who's suffering from that ruling through no fault of her own, right? And Blindfold is also the romantic interest of Legion from back in the Spurrier X-Men Legacy series, which is the best Legion comics. I would say the best Legion-focused series of all time. Probably not the best Legion story of all time, because Chris Claremont and Bill Sienkiewicz invented the character in New Mutants. But regardless, great series. Love it. And that establishes the relationship between Blindfold and Legion, if you're curious in those characters. So bringing that character in makes sense. But what it kind of gives away is that Blindfold's coming back. That means Blindfold will have to be resurrected. Is it Blindfold or Blind Spot? Now I'm confusing myself. I've been reviewing Charles Soule Daredevil articles on comicbookherald.com. That's Blind Spot, right? And this is Blindfold? Because I wrote down Blind Spot. Let me know in the comments here if I'm getting this wrong constantly. Because otherwise, when this goes live, all I'm going to see in the comments are how I got this name wrong over and over again, which I'd like to avoid if possible. So anyway, Blindfold, Ruth, she's going to be back. What this tells me about what's going to happen in Inferno is something that is not super surprising. It's something I've predicted for weeks and weeks now. But precognitive mutants are going to be allowed again. It's going to happen. And what this tells me is not only is Blindfold going to get resurrected, but Destiny is too. I mean, which, like, I don't think I'm blowing minds here with the theory that the whole premise heading into Inferno is that Mystique's had it, she's fed up, and that she's going to burn Krakoa to the ground if she can't resurrect Destiny. And she's probably going to do both, burn Krakoa to the ground and resurrect Destiny. So the fact that Blindfold's here tells me precogs are coming back. We're going to blow that door open. Moira is going to either lose power and say in restricting that, or is just more likely, I think, just straight up going to get outed as a presence on Krakoa. Her desire to prevent precognitive mutants from coming back is going to get, the doors are going to get blown off that, and they're all going to come back. And I think what that tells us, too, is once the precognitive mutants are back, we're going to learn Moira's plan. They're going to be allowed back, not only because Professor X and Magneto and Moira are going to lose power and lose control of the Krakoan situation, but also because I think Moira's scheme is just going to get out there. I mean, what is the biggest mystery of the House and Powers days that could be answered in Inferno. It's what is Moira hiding? What is her plan, actually? And why is she so scared of Destiny or Blindfold exposing it? And I think what this tells us is it's going to get exposed. We're all going to learn it. And that's exciting. That's incredibly exciting. I can't wait to know exactly what it is beyond just theorizing about how it's going to connect to assimilation, to the Phalanx and Dominions and all that fun stuff from Powers of 10, right? So I think that's a really interesting giveaway from this Blindfold appearance at the end of Onslaught Revelation. Possible I'm reading into it too much, but I really think that is kind of what that is almost spoiling in some ways without necessarily intending to. And that's one of the difficulties that we run into with X-Men comics right now is like, you basically can't solicit stuff post Inferno or post 10 Lives and 10 Deaths of Wolverine, which apparently is confirmed it is. The X stands for 10. Again, we should just assume it always does at this point. But you really can't solicit stuff after this event without spoiling things. Because, speaking of which, we'll get to that fun stuff in a second. But solicited, new series, Sabretooth launch. This was announced, I think, officially last week during Marvel Comics Solicits. It is something that I teased probably 3 months ago. It was during the Hellfire Gala on one of these same live streams. I theorized that Victor Laval would, in fact, be writing a Sabretooth series. And lo and behold, that is what is announced for January 2022. Super excited about that. Victor Laval is an incredible, incredible writer, incredible author. You should read their novels, their comics work. All of it is fantastic. But the Sabretooth series is going to be great. I learned when I interviewed Laval, I had the chance to for the Creative Theaters podcast I do on CBH, that he's a big X-Men fan. And him coming in, tackling the Sabretooth series is going to be really cool. But what this tells us, okay, this is another Inferno giveaway of sorts, is that Sabretooth's coming out of the pit. Almost certainly. Or we're going to get exposure to Sabretooth in the pit. We're going to learn a little bit more about the No Place, because what this series is going to tell us, and it's a mini-series, it'll be 5 issues, it's going to tell us what has Sabretooth been doing in this prison? What is it like? What is going on down there? Seemingly, there's like a whole prison society. There's like maybe other beings, maybe other characters. It's not, I don't think with Leonard Kirk on art, it's going to be a series of Sabretooth and black backgrounds, because there's literally nothing going on. So we're going to learn what was it like for Sabretooth in this world. But what that tells me about Inferno is something that I and many others have theorized, is Mystique or someone will likely pull Sabretooth out of this lifetime imprisonment, bring the character back, free them, and that'll be a relevant Inferno plot. If not that, they'll at least try to the point where it makes sense to have a Sabretooth series launch and kind of tell us what has this character been doing, okay? So that's cool. That's cool. Again, it's like one of these things where you see Hickman in all these interviews and in his new Substack newsletter and that sort of thing, talking about how much he hates solicits. It's kind of funny because it's just like, it's this really dumb part of comic marketing when you think about it. It's basically just constant spoilers for readers who probably don't like to be spoiled, but if you don't keep up with it, you don't know what books are coming and what to pull for your comic shop, right? But I think both Sabretooth and this blind spot on the Legionnaires thing kind of seemingly spoil a couple things about Inferno, okay? So those were the two main giveaways that I thought we saw so far. The other things I wanted to touch on from this Hickman interview on AIPT, which again, all of these are well worth reading. A couple concepts that Hickman tossed out here about books that could have happened, but did not. One, a Children of the Vault book. That would have been cool as hell. That would have been super, super enjoyable. I think those characters are badly underestablished, despite Mike Carey doing great work bringing them into the Marvel Universe, and obviously Hickman taking that ball and running with it. I would really enjoy that, actually. Perspective of the Children of the Vault. I think a miniseries makes sense. Hickman would obviously have been a great writer for it, but anyone who is a sci-fi head, I think, could tackle it. And that's kind of something, when I was thinking about... So I think in comics, when you get too focused on comics, a lot of times you're thinking about authors in terms of what comics have they produced and sort of what's their status in the American comic book market, when you're thinking about the big two comics, right? And with Hickman, I think actually a better way to think about it in terms of the absence of this writer is, yes, you're losing a big name in comics. Yes, you're losing someone with a very well-established resume. But what the X-Men line is probably losing first and foremost is someone who thinks in terms of science fiction, is a writer who really has a grasp on good sci-fi. Who is that in the X line? Again, I think Al Ewing has that potential, and that's why when I did a stream a while back, I pitched him as basically the new head of Cosmic X. He's got the Marvel Cosmic thing down. So you've got Ewing in that corner, and I think that's extremely valuable. Could he be the Children of the Vault writer? Maybe. But I think that's an absence where when we look at bringing new writers into the X-Men line, and this is teased in the Hickman interview as well, he says that in addition to Laval, there's like a bunch of other writers who've been working with the team for half a year who are going to get announced on new books. I hope some of them are really sci-fi forward writers, because that is a hole, and I think it's part of what made Powers of 10 especially so incredible and so endearing to me as a book. I think the line needs a lot more of that. I think a Children of the Vault book could deliver it. The other thing, speaking of cosmic and thinking of space and sci-fi, is an Imperial Guard book. I mean, clearly that's been a fandom and something that Hickman's been into for some time. I think he would have killed it on like a 12-issue Imperial Guard maxi series. Now it's hard to know if we'll get nearly as much Shi'ar stuff. I mean, that's not something that Ewing has shown a ton of interest in so far in Sword and really his broader cosmic universe at all. But it's funny. Like in retrospect, both these books sound like they would have been really fun as early Dawn era type things. Now the window may have passed, and that's how it goes, right? There's all sorts of ideas and things that get pitched and don't happen, and a lot of times there's good reason for it. The other thing, final thing that I thought was really cool in the AIPT interview was they had some teaser images of what's to come in Inferno. And most of them were what you'd expect, character one-shots or whatever, and it doesn't tell you much of anything, just that it's going to be a good book with cool art, except they teased a chart. And obviously this will be a data page in Inferno. And my first thought, looking at this, was I bet and I hope that this is a data page telling us about travel through black holes, right? That we're going to get some data on how black holes can be used to travel between Moira's lifelines. Here we see lifeline 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and how Rasputin 4, maybe Zorn, have done that since Powers of 10. Is this wishful thinking? Absolutely. That's a thread and a plot that I would love to see continued since Powers of 10. I think it'd be super exciting. I'm really into now the idea of travel to and from different lifelines in Moira's experience, because it opens up so much sort of alternate reality world building and storytelling that you can do, which I think really expands what the X-Line can be. Hickman in interviews, he's talking about Inferno as a pivot point. Okay, it's a pivot point is the way to think about this event. It's going to open up a new world. Basically, all of the X-Men comics that are coming out right now are going to be ending or changing significantly. Okay, right? Like we know Marauders is going to end. We know Hellions is going to end. The Krakoa era, as we knew it, the Dawn of X, as we knew it, is done and changing. Post-Inferno, post 10 Lives and 10 Deaths. I'm hopeful that what that could potentially mean is now we could have all sorts of books exploring these 10 different lifelines and telling us, how did these pasts actually play out? What are different roles that characters played? I just think that'd be so much fun. There's so much potential there, and it opens the door. They talk about the challenge that the X-Men writers and sort of Marvel has right now is you have the hottest property post House and Powers, and you want to figure out how do we continue to tell great stories that people keep buying in bulk, right? Still want to make money, but also that we can do it for a long time. And I think that's part of the push and pull with Hickman moving off the line, is not wanting to sit with this for 10 years, much to all of our dismay, clearly. But it's like one way you could do that is you open up the lifelines. And now you can tell stories across all sorts of different experiences because you have this character who has 10 lived lifelines through the Marvel Universe. It just opens the door for how long you can be telling, hopefully new and still, story with it still that hasn't that narrative momentum we talked about originally. Okay, so that's what I think that chart is. I'm hopeful. If it could be a bazillion other things, clearly. But I hope that's what it is. What else do we got here on the docket? We got X-Men #3 and X-Corp. Okay, so all right, I'm going to pause there, take a sip, get in any questions if you got them. Again, the super chat is open for priority questions. Otherwise, I'm going to answer some Inferno questions that we got here because there are many, many good ones. I'm seeing the question here, can we get these Casual Krakoa talks on your podcast too? This is something I get the question a lot, so I appreciate that. If people would like these as podcasts, definitely let me know, because the more people that tell me that, the more likely I am to do it. It is a thing I would like to do. It is a thing I would like to start doing. The challenge is just on a technical perspective, I need to figure out how to properly record them while I'm doing a live stream. And then the second thing is I think I need to increase my podcast hosting budget. So I don't think I have enough space with interviews and these really long Casual Krakoas, but it is a thing I would like to do. I think hopefully if I hear from enough people that they would dig it, I'll start uploading to the Comic Book Herald podcast. If you would like to support the site and make it super easy for me to increase that hosting and spend the money that I need to, patreon.com/Comic Book Herald is the easiest way to support Comic Book Herald, and all of that goes into making content available and making new content, hopefully that you continue to enjoy. So I appreciate that question. I'm glad you want that. I definitely would like to be doing that. I just need to sort of get things in gear to do it. I also saw a question earlier about if I get a Comic Book Herald hat, could I send it to you to sign? That's super flattering. Thank you. I do have links in basically all the video show notes for there is a CBH store. It's just a small, easy thing for merch. I don't expect a ton of people are going to want to do that. But the hats are nice. The shirts are nice. Basically, you're just getting a thing basically at cost, and then there's a small amount of little kickback that I take. As a little way to support Comic Book Herald. If you'd like to buy a hat, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Not crazy about giving up my home address, but we could probably find a way to meet up and get a sig if that's what you're really into. So, all right. I appreciate the questions here. I appreciate the interest in Comic Book Herald endeavors, and let's get to some more Inferno questions. All right. Let's see. What do we got? Number 1. Will Moira join up with Emma in a last-minute ditch effort move? I like this question a lot. And I like this question a lot because for much of the build to Inferno, I've been thinking about Moira and Charles and probably Magneto, but we don't totally know depending on how Trial of Magneto plays out and whether or not it will be happening while Inferno's happening, right? Like the timing and the continuity and the consistency of that is a little in flux until Inferno starts. Like Onslaught Revelation, for example, comes out at a time where it's like, okay, I guess Trial of Magneto hasn't happened yet. And that's the thing I sort on the reading order, but just in terms of if you're just reading these things as they come out according to publication order, that's kind of confusing. That's not the easiest. But I've been thinking about Moira definitely in terms of connections to Charlie and Mags and kind of like going down with the ship with them, essentially, right? Like that she was tied to them inextricably. And the idea that Moira could bail on the Professor and Magneto and say, you two screwed it up, you're on your own, I'm going with Emma, that's great. I love that. Definitely going into Inferno, I mean, one of the things that we can anticipate, and I had a Road to Inferno video that went up today as well, which talks about a lot of this, right? And kind of what I expect is going to happen and what comics are going to matter the most going into the Inferno event. And Emma is pretty clearly going to take over in some capacity, right? Like Emma is going to have a much bigger role through Inferno and post-Inferno. I think there's a really good chance that she's the one that is sort of outing, the mistakes and the bad decisions that some of these leaders have been making. There's images of her like wearing the Cerebro helmet, so there's a really good chance that she could be taking over Resurrection in some capacity. I think Emma's going to be making some real pushes for like no more Beast with X-Force, no more Mr. Sinister making chimeras in his secret clone labs, no more secrets. No more not resurrecting precognitive mutants. We're supposed to be resurrecting a safe haven for all of mutant kind. I think Emma's absolutely going to be in charge of that.
Could Moira join with her? I mean, it seems like their efforts are at odds right now, but we don't totally know what Emma's gonna want. So it feels possible that would be really cool. It would be really interesting if Moira was like, "Hey, I'm out now, and people know about me, and the secret's out. Everybody knows it." I guess it depends what the secret is too. Like if Moira's secret is like, "I'm going to use all of you to gain assimilation to a phalanx, and also, by the way, I actually pushed for a Nimrod coming online secretly, even though it seemed like I was trying to destroy it, because I know that getting a Nimrod online is how I can create this ascension that I need." I don't know, some sort of plot mechanics there. If basically it seems like Myra saying, "Forget all of you. I'm going to do this thing for mutant survival that benefits none of you," then I can't see a lot of people being like, "Yeah, I'm Team Myra. That sounds great." Especially Emma, right? So it kind of depends what the secret is. I like the idea, though. I like where you're thinking, and that's pretty interesting. Will Moira, Myra? Moira. Myra. What do you go with? Potato? It's also the character of the woman in Schitt's Creek, which I finally started watching, which is enjoyable. I should know how to say it, but I don't know. I can do a better Moira than I can say her name, right? Just from watching X-Men the animated series, right? Like, "Oh, Charles, you're the only friend I have," right? I can do a spot-on accent and interpretation of the character, but pronouncing her name definitely gets to me. All right, let me know in the comments here. Okay, we got a couple super chats, which I'll tackle quick here. Says, "You should write issue reviews. I would love to see a review each week of each X-Men issue. Thanks for the good work." Thank you. Appreciate that. That is very nice of you to say. I mean, basically, that's what Crack and Krakoas are, I think, in a lot of ways, right? Like, that's my issue review of the comics that get me the most interested in any given week. I don't necessarily publish all those on CBH anymore, just because the timing of duplicating efforts basically just doesn't pay off. But I appreciate that thought. I do think too, like one thing I've been thinking about through Inferno, through the end of this year, I'm going to be all in on talking about these comics. I think let's see, next week is Inferno #1. That's why we're doing this pregame. After Inferno #1, I'm going to be hosting a live stream with Blurred Without Fear and Verno from the Cerebros, and we're going to do a post-game report of the first issue. Hopefully we can do that again probably by the 4th issue, I would guess. So that's going to be super fun. I think that should be Crack and Krakoa number 200. We'll do a big post-game report of the Inferno event. So I'm going to be all in on Inferno through the end of the event. Going into 10 lives and 10 deaths, I'm sure I'll want to cover that pretty extensively as well. Depending on what the line looks like after that and how engaged and enthused I am, I may want to make a shift. I may want to be way less X-Men dedicated, in many ways. There's a lot of other comics and storytelling that I'm interested in. I've got some ideas for some cool plans for different sort of reading clubs and stuff that we could talk about. I don't expect X-Men videos will go away anytime soon, but I do anticipate I'm going to want to start reviewing and talking about other things more extensively as my enthusiasm for X-Men wanes, but then hopefully as it picks up again, I'll dive right back in, right? So it's all going to be just based on how excited am I about the line, right? That's why I started doing this with House and Powers. It wasn't just because I want to talk about every X-Men thing all the time. It's because it's really good right now, and that makes it more exciting to talk about, right? So, all right. Next question from a super chat. Thanks so much for your support. Really, really appreciate it. Do you think we will have a death in Inferno that it's not going to get resurrected after? That's an interesting question. Ten of Swords kind of already did the thing of messing with resurrection, and even then it was like it just got scrambled for Rockslide, who we haven't seen in months, and Gorgon, who seems to be doing fairly well as of Onslaught Revelation, seems to have found a new groove. Certainly an event this size, that seems like a possibility. I don't think so, honestly. I think Mutant Resurrection is such a lock for the Krakoa era, and getting rid of that, I actually, first off, it would really mess with what's going on in X-Men, where probably the major through line and sort of thread of that is humans learning about mutant resurrection and that getting outed and sort of what are the implications of that. I don't expect mutant resurrection will go away. Could there be somebody who, and I guess, you could potentially see a case where like Mystique makes her play and she does resurrect Destiny and Emma teams with her and they free Sabretooth and whatever happens, right, throughout the event. But then Mystique dies in the process. And then somehow her side loses resurrection capabilities. They go off to do whatever sort of counter mutant faction they're going to do. But then Professor X and Magneto, still clinging to whatever Krakoan government they have, will not resurrect her. So you can see something like that where they were just like withholding a resurrection based on a death. But I don't think we're actually going to lose it. We're not actually going to lose the process there. And I think too, like one thing that, if we go back to the Way of X or the Onslaught Revelation teaser for the Spark of X, like just the implication of having a team like this of Forget-Me-Not, Blindfold, Pixie, Juggernaut, maybe Dust. Am I missing Dust, actually, in the background there? I'm not sure I've mentioned that character. Maybe now going by Congregation. I don't know. Maybe that was just a cool play on words. But regardless, like just having a team like that tells me there's going to be some Krakoan government still, right? Like it doesn't seem like the actual, like Mystique's burning it down and severing it or creating her own movement or whatever it means. Like there's still going to be a Krakoan government with mutants who want to align with the nation, right? Why else would Nightcrawler and the group there be leading the Spark of X and continuing to, and again, I know they say it's not this, but police the laws of Krakoa, right? So like that kind of hints to me that like it's not totally going to go away. The Krakoa era is too fruitful probably for them to do that. So all right, good questions. I appreciate that. Let's tackle some more here as we go. Again, get in as many questions as you can. I will try to tackle all the good ones that I see as they pop in. Will Rogue join Team Moira and Destiny when she finds out that what Charles and Eric have done? Feels likely. It's interesting in the Hickman interview, he talked about how he had a big plot for Rogue in Inferno. And I was kind of reading it initially. I was like, what? Why? Like, why would that make sense? Which is pretty goofy because, as we should remember, Mystique and Destiny are Rogue's two moms. And they, raised her to an extent back when she was working with them, for a minute on the Brotherhood when she got her Captain Marvel powers, when she got her Carol Danvers powers, right? She was with Mystique and Destiny at the time. So those characters have massive, massive connections in X-Men history. Apparently will not be a major part of Inferno, but I guess, probably... Yeah, I mean, it's like, that's one of those things too, where like, it's weird that Rogue wouldn't be pushing more for Destiny. In the same way that, it's weird that some of the Friends of Blindfold would have been pushing more for her resurrection. They're definitely, one of the things that I buy the most when people talk about Professor X tampering with the state of mutants and really sort of messing with their complacency on Krakoa is like why they're okay with certain characters not being resurrected. Legion kind of calls that out in Way of X #1. It was one of the things I liked when he talks to Nightcrawler about like why is nobody pushing for Blindfold resurrection. But yeah, I could see Rogue teaming with Moira and Destiny. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I think the lineup right now, the anticipated lineup, and I'm sure it'll change and the story will be what it is, but Mystique, Destiny, Rogue, Emma Frost, Mr. Sinister could always just be ready to flip sides and betray, right? Kind of his thing. Honestly, the most surprising thing would be if he didn't. So that's maybe the route you go. And then and Sabretooth, right? And whoever his friends are in prison. That actually reminds me. So in the Sabretooth series, this is going to be a 5-issue series. But Hickman in his interview says that it's part of a triptych for Laval. He's going to be writing a triptych. And I totally knew exactly what that was. It's going to be, I mean, what I read that as a trio of 5-issue miniseries, which is cool. I'm wondering, could we get my long-held theory of Sabretooth and the Exiles, where we have Sabretooth freed and then traveling across alternate realities with his new gang of friends, whoever he meets in this no place, right? Could the no place access black hole travel? Could that be connected to that chart we looked at earlier? All that stuff in play. The fact that Laval's going to be around beyond the 5-issue miniseries is a very good thing. I'm very excited about that. All right, next question. Will Madeline Pryor return? If so, will she finally be with her love, Alex, and reunite with her son, Cable? I've been saying for a while, I do think Madeline Pryor will return. I think she's going to return in Hellions as the event is happening. Will she finally be with her love, Alex, and reunite with her son, Cable? Yes to Alex, no to Cable. Will the 10 Lives Deaths of Wolverine be a total X-Men reboot? No. No, it will not. I don't think we're in reboot territory. Again, Hickman describes it as a pivot point, but the rationale for him leaving was these writers want to hang out and play in the Krakoa era for a really long time. I think if they were all ready for the reboot, he'd probably be staying, actually. But instead, they're going to play with Krakoa era. I think the 10 Lives, 10 Deaths thing, I'm still hopeful that that means Moira's lifelines, but it could just be Wolverine history. So no, I don't anticipate it will be a total X-Men reboot. Good question, though. Good question. All right. Post-Inferno intrigues me so much. Could we get an Arakko Planet book? Could we get a Quiet Council book? Will we get a Moira book? I think we're going to get a lot of new books, is the thing. I think we're going to get a lot of new types of series. Again, sort of the state of the X-Men line is going to change. It's going to turn into something else. That is good. That means new books. That means new writers, hopefully, and in a different look for this line, which I think is exciting. I just think that's a good thing. As to those specifically, I mean, I've been pulling for a Planet of Arakko book since Ten of Swords. I think that would be incredible. I'm probably the most into that of the ones you mentioned. A Moira book would have to, I mean, here's the thing, is I think Inferno is the Moira book. I do. I just think it's like that's the Moira story is what Hickman's telling in these big X-Men events. I think someone doing an actual Moira X miniseries that isn't Hickman at this point sounds like a really tall order. Like you're kind of stepping on his toes, kind of on his baby with the X-Men line. That's not a job I would want, certainly. Try to name a creator who'd be good at the Moira X series. It's a really challenging prospect to name the creator who could step in and nail that with sort of the significance that book would hold throughout the whole X-Men line. I mean, truly, honestly, if you can answer who should write a Moira X book, you can answer who should be the new head of X. This is something we've talked about a bunch. I did a whole Casual Krakoa on it, but everybody here on YouTube has been talking for months about should there be a new head of X? And I've basically been saying no, that's very unique. It's very specific to Hickman. It's going to be a head of X by committee kind of thing, with Al Ewing probably is the most prominent writer there. But again, kind of based on my attitude about these comics today, and the more I think about it, it's kind of I would actually like that. If they could find the right person to kind of say this is the person driving the center of the line, and they are basically this is the head coach, because it is kind of just which I know is what editorial is supposed to be, and Jordan White is still there, but I really liked how Hickman carved out this thing of player coach. It's just such a rare piece of the puzzle, or maybe general manager, right? It's like a team lost its GM, and it's well, what, are you just not going to hire one? It just feels like a hole in the organization, and I think you need someone driving what the center of the line's going to be in a way that no one's really situated to right now. So hopefully Inferno and 10 Lives and 10 Deaths shakes that up. Because again, there's no one, with the exception of Al Ewing on the cosmic side, and Al Ewing would be a financer, has a good enough track record where I'd be okay, let's see what you can do. Absolutely, I'm into it. But there's really no one else in the office who comes close to filling that role, and I'm not going to recast again, because again, it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. But I'm actually more open to that idea of you should probably name someone head of X. I actually think that would solidify fears about the line and also just get people more engaged with it again. But the question being well, who do you name? And that's where we run into problems. All right. So did we ever get answers on Emma and the logic crystals and Christian Frost being murdered? Seems like there should be Inferno implications. We don't know. So we know the logic crystal thing has been playing out in Wolverine, of all books. Okay. We found out in Wolverine that pirates had the logic crystals at one point, that Solemn stole them from them, and now Wolverine's on the hunt for Solemn with some Arakko pirates, or without them, but through them. And that's where the logic diamonds are at. Okay, so those are still in play, it would seem. There was, I actually think, potentially more crucial is Emma had a conversation in Hickman's final X-Men issue with a mysterious group of individuals who were like, to my knowledge, like didn't exist in Marvel before this. I don't know who they were. About some mystery gift, a box of something. That I don't think has come up since, and that feels like the sort of thing that is definitely whatever mystery package she got there is probably going to come up in Inferno again. I'd look for that before I'd look for the logic crystals, because you're right. Like, it does seem like there should be Inferno implications with that sheer gift of logic crystals. That's what's used to power Cerebro and all those mutant backups, and obviously it's an important thing. But I think that's all playing out in the pages of Wolverine, if memory serves. All right. I see a suggestion here, Moira X by Chip Zdarsky. That's a good pick. That's a good pick. I'm definitely... I mean, there's no answer here where I'm not reading the book. I mean, I think the best pick is Mike Carey. I think would be the most exciting. Chip, I think, would probably tackle that well. It's hard to know, though, like, is that the right fit? I mean, the thing with Chip Zdarsky is, like, every book he's gone on, he's done cool things with in the Marvel Universe. And whether it seemed like he was situated for that or not, like Fantastic Four, his Marvel 2-in-1 is my favorite Fantastic Four story of, I don't even know how long, since Hickman, maybe? Same with the Fantastic Four X-Men, I thought was solid. His Daredevil, obviously, has been great. So, like, that would be interesting. That'd be cool. I'm game for that. I'd like to see it play out, but I don't know. That could go wrong in a lot of ways, too. So, it's an interesting suggestion. I like it. I like that casting, potentially. All right, we got another question here. Okay, answered all those main ones. How do you think Apocalypse will return back into the fold? Do we see Apocalypse in Inferno? It definitely seemed like a thing that's going to be a lot longer. If you remember, there was one of Mr. Sinister's secrets. This was, again, from Hickman's final issue of X-Men 21. One of the secrets there was, what's the big blue mutant doing? It's going to be a while before we find out. And that definitely made me think that this is not going to be a place, or not going to have a place in Inferno. I don't know they're ready for that. I could see one, like, Apocalypse cameo or something in this, a quick cut to a panel of Apocalypse. But I'd be surprised if Apocalypse had a central role in Inferno. I think that's the thing they're going to save for later. How much later, I don't know. Right? Like what would that... And that's the thing, too, is you have to play out, like, okay, so we've got Apocalypse and his family, mutants in Amenth, in this other world accessible dimension, right? Why? What are they doing there? How do we bring, like, what would you need to bring them back for? You would need to bring them back for endgame type stuff, where it was like mutants versus whatever the endgame threat is. Is that the Phalanx? Is that way down the line, man-machine hybrids, Homo Novissima kind of stuff? Is it anything else that would play a role here? Is it Nimrods, right? And, like, that's the thing, is, like, we're going to see Nimrods in Inferno. They're on the cover, one of the issues. Like, we know they're back. Like, we're going to see Orcus and we're going to see Nimrods attacking or infesting Inferno. How are mutants going to stand up against that? Because, the way that was pitched in House and Powers, it's like Nimrods were the ultimate, undefeatable mutant killing thing, right? We see in Powers Life 9, Apocalypse can't handle Nimrods. So if they needed to call, make a ring to Apocalypse and say, like, hey, we got Nimrods, come on down, it makes sense. I just don't think we're there yet. But it's an interesting question. It is a really interesting question. And I suspect there are plans to bring Apocalypse back. It's not like it's not a thing that's going to happen. It feels like endgame stuff, as opposed to where we are now, which is clearly like this middle of the road pivot point for whatever the line's going to be. Another question we got here. Dave, do you think the Phalanx will be touched on in Inferno? Yeah, I do. It'd be really weird. And I think I talked about this last week or last Casual Krakoa. Thinking, like, probably because that feels like endgame stuff to me. All the Phalanx and the assimilation and dominions and whatnot. But it does seem like it's got to be kind of impossible to talk about the mystery of Moira's plans without also talking about the Phalanx. It just feels like if her plans are disconnected from that, it'd be like, well, why was the Powers of 10 story told the way it was, right? So to me, it makes sense that they be touched on. I don't think we're necessarily at the stage where we would see them in the picture and as a threat and as a thing that's really like in the story, but I think it's a thing that will be talked about in terms of what Moira's planning. I think that is definitely something we're going to see in X-Men comics moving forward. I would be very disappointed if it doesn't come up at all. Again, like I think for my money, all of the Powers of 10 stuff is what I'm most interested in seeing progressed or evolved or straight up solved in Inferno. And that's definitely got to touch on Phalanx and Dominions and Black Hole Travel and Rasputin and all that stuff, right? So, all right. I think that is a good question. Let's keep the questions rolling. I'll be here for a little bit longer on the stream, but I do want to talk about the other comics that came out today in brief. So X-Men number 3 came out, third issue in the Jerry Duggan, Pepe Larraz, Marty Gracia, and Clayton Cowles series. The general vibe that I'm getting from X-Men right now is a lot of folks are like, hey, this is a fun superhero comic. And then you have folks like me who are like, yeah, but it's not important anymore. And that's a bummer. And, I talked at the very start of this about how the line, like this is case study number 1 for a book that just I feel kind of hollow about. And I feel like I should be more excited about it. Pepe Larraz and Marty Gracia are killing it. If they were not on art, I think this would be a book that I was like middling to pass on. Like if they were not on art and making this thing look exceptional, I really do think I'd just be like, I don't see why this is like a main focus. I think Duggan's doing fine work. I think if we were pre-House and Powers, this would be like a really interesting X-Men run where I'd be like, oh, finally, like somebody's doing these weird, interesting things. Like this is going to be kind of an underrated run. But again, because we're a part of this specific moment and in all this interconnectedness, like this feels like a run starting off where it's just kind of like, okay, what is the import of this? Like it's the main X-Men title, but it doesn't feel like it's really driving the line. The main thread, like I said, going through this is there's Dr. Stasis is this Orcus player who helps Ben Urich at the end of this issue. Basically gives him some facts about the fact that clearly Cyclops has been resurrected. So like mutant resurrection's going to get outed. That's going to have some ramifications. Again, like I said in the Trial of Magneto number 2 review last week, like mutant kind is not that protective of resurrection. Like they're acting like it's a state secret, but they're not actually doing things to treat it like a state secret in any significant capacity. So like I don't know, that to me doesn't feel as much of a bombshell as it should. But it's being treated like a bombshell in these issues, which I appreciate. Again, it's a nice book. If you just want like a good, fun superhero comic with a villain of the week kind of plot. This one calls back the High Evolutionary's role in the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver retcon in the Rick Remender written Uncanny X-Men, Uncanny Avengers, which was like circa 2015. It's one of those weird like short-lived series that basically was coming out while Secret Wars was dropping. So in Uncanny Avengers, High Evolutionary is revealed to be behind Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver's powers. They are not mutants anymore ever since then, which obviously is being maybe dealt with in Trial of Magneto. He also creates High Evolutionary, aka Herbert, creates Luminous, who is his daughter, quote unquote, has the powers of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. A lot of the references here of Rogue being like, F that guy, do not deal with the High Evolutionary, is because she is tortured extensively by him in that run. So like that's what people are talking about in this issue of X-Men. Again, it's a fine comic. I love what's going on with Sync as kind of this like superior to Rogue version of her power set, which is really interesting. Obviously, like so here High Evolutionary gets a drop of Sync's blood. That's all he wants. That's clearly going to have major ramifications, or some ramifications going forward in this run. We'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. The next Krakoa for the next issue reads Heads Up. I'll be the test for me is if you take Larraz and Gracia off this book, which is going to happen, is it interesting at all? And I really think like it's a good superhero beat 'em up. And if that's all you've been craving through this era, fine. I like the big ideas. I like stuff that I can dig into and think about and talk about. And this comic does not give me that in much of a significant capacity. I mean, the thing they reference here that they talk about is like this is basically Mojoverse type stuff with Cordyceps Jones running, trying to defeat Earth on Game World. Okay, like it's basically a rejiggered, reconfigured Mojo World kind of thing. They're just like playing games with the X-Men. Mojo World stuff does not tend to be the most interesting. Okay, so I appreciate it. People like it. I know people love it, which is why I feel weird about not being more into it. But I am not, and that is just the way it is. I'm not I don't actually think it's bad. I think it's how could it be bad with this art? But it's definitely just a comic where it just breezes by me and does not quite deliver what I had hoped this X-Men era would. All right, so let's see. I'm seeing comments here that we're gonna have a guest artist in issues 4 and 5 of this. So okay, test accepted. We'll see what that looks like. I'm seeing here from a comment that Pepe picked the guest artist. That's great, but that doesn't mean anything really. Okay. Question here in the super chat: why are they treating resurrection like a big deal? How many times have people come back to life in the Marvel universe? Even Iron Man did it. Well, it's I think the big thing here is it's all the time for everyone. So yes, superhero death has become meaningless in Marvel. They have played that too many times for it to have the same sort of impact that it ever once had. But it's not literally every character can get resurrected in a literal queue, basically on a dot. Like if they die in one issue, they'll be back the next. It's never been that. Captain America has a good death of story in that Brubaker run, Steve Epting. But it's a process. It's a story to bring them back. Same for even Human Torch in Hickman's Fantastic Four. That didn't last long, maybe a year, but there was a story to be told about how it happened. Now, not even everyone gets that because it's just a thing. It's just a thing that happens. That's kind of the point of Mutant Resurrection is that it wasn't a big deal anymore. Death in superhero universes became, not a big deal. So you need to have this thing, this mechanism to say, yeah, we're not even going to pretend that's a big deal because we know you're all over it. So let's tell different stories. Let's try new things. That's what is exciting about this era. And it's all about breaking the rules and saying, okay, we know you have expectations. We know you've been reading X-Men comics for years. How can we blow that up and try something new? That's what I'm excited about. Is what can we do that is new and interesting, and that's what this line needs an infusion of right now. Okay. Question here: what do you think of X-Corp, Dave? I think class, you can probably answer this one for them. I do not enjoy X-Corp. Final issue. 5th issue came out today, or I'm assuming it's the final issue. It's definitely the final issue for me. I'm not going to be reading more X-Corp. Great covers. David Ajak, great covers to X-Corp. I tweeted this earlier, but pour one out for all the future Marvel Unlimited readers who are going to get suckered and tricked into reading this series because the covers look awesome. It's a classic Bill Sienkiewicz on Beauty and the Beast situation where you have a really good artist doing really good covers on a book that is not worth your time. X-Corp 1-5 was a bust. I've said this before. I think it's probably the worst book of the line to date. I think it's worse than Fallen Angels. More power to you if you dug it. Obviously, people like Fallen Angels too. I think, I've talked about this. Like Fallen Angels, I've been very critical of. It was very disappointing. The thing about Fallen Angels that was so disappointing was how badly it misinterpreted key characters to the point where it just really couldn't tell a story. It really couldn't function as a story because it was not using the characters as they exist in this moment in the X-Men universe. And then on top of that, there were way too many close-ups of teeth. Specifically, there were too many close-ups of teeth. That was a real knock against that book. X-Corp, I was just scanning this 5th issue. I don't know what, it's hard to get back to the point of thinking about what did I think I wanted from this book? like what did I think I wanted from the business side of X-Men, about the Krakoan drug trade? Because this book makes me feel like that was never a good idea and it could never be executed and no one should have ever tried. It's a massive disappointment. There's no good reason to check it out. I mean, truly, like there's nothing in here that you're going to need for the rest of the X line. Yeah, I don't really have anything more to say about it than that. It's a massive, massive bust. I would say don't bother. I think if you like it, again, cool. Like, good on you. Like, everyone likes different things. But I would be curious, like, what it delivered for you that you enjoyed, because and part of it too was like, so you have, and I think this is when Hickman's talking about like the artistic palette of the X-Men line. You have these covers from David Aja where it's like, that looks awesome. Look at that style. Look at that vision. Look at that ability to incorporate the Krakoan drug trade into a business transaction with Archangel in a suit. Everything about it is so cool looking. And then you open it and it's like just the most banal X-Men comic, just the most middle of the road house style kind of like, oh, here's, I guess, a Monet and Archangel story. It did nothing for me. I don't want to say too much about it because people don't like the series. I'm not alone in this. This book's getting dumped on. I don't need to dump on it any further. It's not it. It's not the one. All right. So that's what I think of X-Corp. Any final questions that people want to get in here? Definitely let me know. Again, Super Chat is open for those of you who want to donate here, which I very much appreciate and will support. But otherwise, I don't think I have any big time remaining questions. Somebody says, are you 100% sure your Docs and Rocks reading orders, Dawn of X and Reign of X reading orders, are correct, which everybody can find on comicbookherald.com. You can find links in the show notes. Am I 100% sure? No. I mean, I don't go back and read them after I label the things, but I read all the comics as they come out every week, and then I go and update Comic Book Herald usually that day or that week based on what I read. If people see discretion or disparities, in something that I've put on there, they can let me know in the comments on that, and I will update accordingly. I'm not super precious about it, but I mean, I'm like 90% sure it's real good. Yeah. So check it out. It shouldn't mess anything up too badly. I don't expect. I mean, honestly, we're at the point now, like I was saying with Trial of Magneto and an Onslaught Revelation, and then heading into Inferno. It's one of the first times in the X-Men line where the reading order really gets messy and kind of challenging, because, like, generally to this point, if you read in publication order, like, you're in fairly safe territory. But with these stories, it's like, I mean, clearly the Magneto of Onslaught Revelation has not dealt with the Trial of Magneto stuff yet. So it's going to get messy. I was really hoping that Trial of Magneto would, like, clearly integrate into Inferno. And I just don't know how it would not and function. But it's like 3 issues of that are going to be still coming out as the 4 issues of Inferno are coming out. If that's not synchronized, it's going to be a very Whiplash-like reading experience. I hope they pick up on that one. All right, seeing in the super chat here, digital or physical comics. I mean, in theory, I prefer to read physical, but I read almost everything digitally these days. I would much rather read physical. I mean, honestly, the biggest reason for that is, with X-Men in particular, is like, I want to read them when they come out. And I want to read them in the morning and get ready and do videos on them and talk about them. And if I do physical, I got to wait till my comic shop opens and till I can get there, So that's an impediment. The idea and the concept of sitting down and reading physical comics in the lazy boy with no child screaming at me sounds amazing, but it's also generally not my day-to-day reality. So I'd prefer that, but 98% of what I read is digital, which does limit some things. I do think you lose a few things, especially on like double wide spreads. I just don't think it ever looks as good. So, all right, we got some other super chats rolling in. Thanks everybody for donating. I really appreciate that. I'm going to tackle all these before I go, and any additional cool comics that I see. If Donny Cates come over to the X books, what would you like to see him tackle? What would Donny be good at? I'm not dying for that, I gotta say. I'm definitely not at a point with those books where I'm like super into that idea. I I don't know who was. I actually think Kate's on an X-Force book. Kate's and Stegman on a post-Percy X-Force would probably fit their style. And actually, whereas Percy is a more kind of heady writer, right? It's all about the CIA type operations and the mysteries of that. I think Kate's and Stegman would just hit you over the head with action, and actually that sounds like it could potentially be an interesting change of pace on that title specifically. So anyway, that'd be my pick right off the bat. All right, let's get to some of these questions. Okay, what do you think about those quick panels of Wolverine and Sync? Oh yeah, it was nice. It was nice. Good touch. And that's, I should give credit where it's due. I've been pretty critical of Duggan's X-Men. There's a lot of really nice moments. Wolverine and Sync having sort of an emotional moment, but still obviously only Sync really remembering their Vault experience together. You have Cyclops is very funny throughout this comic. Very funny. I like the use. I mean, Duggan's sense of humor is better than a lot of other X-Men writers. Like, definitely got to give credit there. So there's really nice moments in the comic. It's just, it just doesn't have that capital I import. Which is, not every comic needs that. Not every comic needs that, I know, but that's what I'm looking for there. Do you think that Post Inferno will reintroduce the Illuminati as teased in Hellfire Gala and possibly have Emma a member against Charles and learn what Reed whispered to Charles? Yeah, I forgot Reed whispered things to Charlie. I think bringing the Illuminati back. I mean, the question here is, was that Hickman calling back to his own work? Or was he teasing something to come? And I think the problem with bringing the Illuminati back in an X-Men centric way is that's not an X-Men story, especially if you lose Hickman from the equation. Somebody who, now put, like, him and Bendis are obviously the ones identified with writing them. I don't think the Illuminati will be a big part of this. It'd be cool if you got like a mutant Illuminati, right? I mean, Emma, Namor, like, you're halfway there. That's basically what Magneto, Moira, and Charles are. They're the mutant Illuminati. Like, that's exactly what the story is retelling New Avengers, but with them as the Illuminati. I think you could, maybe it's Emma saying, let's bring this out in the light, or maybe it's Emma just saying, give me a seat at the table. And that's interesting as well. If you get Moira, Charles, Magneto, Emma, Namor on a mutant Illuminati, obviously Beast wants a seat. Like, there's an interesting way to do it. I like the concept, the idea of the concept being reconfigured for the mutants. I don't see it being super Reed Richards, that version centric, just because they're not X-Men characters. But Dan Slott's still doing his Dan Slott thing on whatever's coming with the Reckoning War, right? They got plans there. I guess we'll see how is the Reckoning and Reckoning War about Reed's reckoning for what Charles and Magneto did to him. Almost certainly not, but it could be. It could be. All right. We got a question here. Mojo and Mojoverse makes no sense to me. Want to explain it? Also, is Games World a future Mojoverse Mojo World? I don't want to explain it, but I will try. So Mojo is an alien entity, and Mojoverse is basically it's like a pocket reality, essentially, where he controls everything, and like everything happening there is, originally it's like it's all TV, like it's all entertainment that he's scheduling and coordinating. So they bring the X-Men in as these, characters with powers who will give good entertainment. So it's very kind of meta and winky and saying like, oh, you want all this violence for your entertainment? Great. And it's Mojo really leaning into that. As pure entertainment, despite the ramifications of like people could die. Is Games World future Mojoverse? Mojo World? No, like not literally. It's a totally different thing. Games World in these X-Men comics is, a betting parlor. Like it's a betting place where this Cordyceps Jones alien entity is like basically saying like, hey, who wants to bet on whether this, annihilation wave can destroy Earth? It's a totally different thing as far as I understand it. I'm just making the comparison. They are similar in nature. They are not literally alike. Okay, and that is a very short explanation, but honestly, like I'm not super into Mojo or Mojoverse stuff. It always is. It's often more interesting in theory. I actually probably like the X-Men animated series take on it, which just simplified it and made it way less weird. Which sounds like it'd be worse, but it's not. It's actually way more direct. Yeah, remember the X Babies? Like that's you have Chris Claremont and Art Adams on an X-Men annual in the '80s, where the X Babies come from. Which again, like Art Adams, incredible, the art throughout it. But these are like 60-page behemoth issues. They are slogs, absolute slogs. Okay, yeah, it's a challenging one and can potentially break your brain if you let it. So, all right, I think I covered everything I want to. I'm excited for Inferno next week. I think it's gonna be awesome. I can't wait. Thanks for everybody who joined on the live stream. I really appreciate it. I hope you're all excited about Inferno as well. Again, I'll be doing videos on it next week. Subscribe to the channel, hang out here, look for what's coming. And again, next week, the Casual Krakoa will be a Inferno #1 post-game report. I'll be live with Blurred Without Fear and Verno from the Cerebros. And we'll be talking all things Inferno #1 and answering any good questions that you guys have. So thanks everybody for listening. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your support of myself and Comic Book Herald. And, as always, enjoy the comics.